This week's Sunday School lesson presentation live stream from Whitestone Missionary Baptist Church, 187 South Parkway East in Memphis, Tennessee. Thank you for joining us. As I always do, let us not let our guards down in face of this COVID-19 monster. It's a terrible, terrible disease. And though some cases indicate that we may be dropping in some areas, some states, let us not let our guards down, because it's going up in some other places and you never know who has it. This week's lesson is our 69th in the series, 7th for the fall quarter. We want to thank this week our media ministry team, Reverend Grady Henderson and Miss Marquita Fletcher. Our subject for this week is Miriam and Aaron oppose Moses. His brother and his sister oppose him. The Bible text which this subject rests in is Numbers chapter 12, the first 16 verses. The theme for the book of Numbers is wilderness wanderings. The theme for October 3rd through the 24th, seeing God's faithfulness. That's the most important thing about this series of lessons this quarter. Is God's faithfulness never wanes. God's faithfulness to his people never decreases. In spite of the shortcomings, the wickedness, and the evil and sin that are committed by those in the text. Therefore, it should say to us in this 21st century that God's faithfulness is awfully kind and graceful to us in this 21st century. The theme for the quarter, for the fall quarter, is faith on trial. Our faith in God through Christ is always on trial. It's always being tested. Let's remember that National Breast Cancer Awareness Month is all of this month. The golden text is Numbers 12, verse 6. If there be a prophet among you, this is God talking through the writer, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. So in that 6th verse, the first thought is that God made it clear to Moses, his brother and sister, that Moses was his chosen leader. And he also indicated that he did not like what they were saying against or about Moses. According to commentator Ferguson, God addressed Miriam and Aaron directly, voicing his disgust with them. The chief commentator, of course, is Robert Ferguson, Jr. Now, the lesson is divided into two sections. First section, Aaron and Miriam speak against Moses. That's the first 9 verses. In verse 1, ethnic issue pops up. They didn't like the fact that their brother had married an Ethiopian woman. She was not of their race, so they were disturbed by that. And they said he was disobeying or disrespecting God. But they were more concerned about themselves. Verses 2 and 3 lifts out Miriam and Aaron's jealousy showed itself. And verses 4 and 5, God calls Moses, Miriam, and Aaron into a conference with him in the tabernacle. The faithfulness of Moses is highlighted in verses 6 and 7, and in verses 8 and 9 of that first section, God's special relationship with Moses. Up to this point in history and up to this point in the text, God had only spoken to Moses directly, no one else. Section 2, Moses intercedes for Miriam. That's highlighted in verses 10 through 16, the last half of the lesson text. Verse 10 highlights Miriam contracts leprosy. She ended up catching a infectious skin disease. It affected her whole body, her mind, and so forth, her eyesight. Aaron pleads with Moses. Aaron, the brother of Miriam and the brother of Moses, pleaded with Moses basically to ask God to release and to save or heal or restore Miriam, verses 11 and 12. Verses 13 and 14, Moses intercedes. Moses goes to God and prays, and God answers in verse 14. A restoration of Miriam. She was healed, she was restored, but she still had to receive some punishment. Those are the last two verses of the lesson text. Now, there's some words that need to be defined. I know most of you, and in all due respect to our current superintendent of Sunday school, Mrs. Carolyn Robinson Brooks, and our superintendent emeritus, Brother William Baskin. Restoration for all of you teachers of Whitestone, any other congregation, whether it's in California, whether it's in Vicksburg or New Orleans or Texas, Oklahoma, or Michigan, in Detroit, Southfield, or East Lansing, it doesn't matter. There are words that need to be understood within the context of what is given to us in the scriptures. Because when we read the scriptures, we are reading what the writer left. The writer is, see, we want to understand the world of the text, which means what was going on before this writing or before these episodes became necessary, and then the world of the text and the world in front of the text, that's us. The world of the text, the world in the text, and then the world in front of the text, that's you and I trying to interpret what was happening then and what is being said, not only to them, but what is being said to us. So restoration means to make new, to fix. For example, the world of the text, the world behind the text, and the world in front of the text. All this plays into how we interpret or understand the scriptures as it relates to us in the 21st century. So restoration means to make new, fix, cure, to make well, reprimand. God reprimanded Aaron and Miriam. In essence, that means call them on the carpet, or he scold them, or he blamed them for being distasteful and being disrespectful toward their brother Moses, who was God's selected leader. Inalienable means absolute, basic right, inbred, natural. Cogent, C-O-G-E-N-T, means apt, fitting, effective. Affirm, when we say God affirmed his allegiance to Moses, it means he testified to Moses' position with him and in his court, to declare or to approve of, to confirm a truth. Spurious, S-P-U-R-I-O-U-S, means fake, bogus, to put on a sham. Riddle, God didn't speak to Miriam and Aaron in riddles. He didn't mince any words. He didn't play with them. He went straight to the point. So he didn't brain tease them or confuse them or give them a mystery. Figure of speech means to exaggerate or exaggeration, communication that is not meant literally, allegory. For example, you're saying things, but it's only a figure of speech. He put his foot in his mouth. Now, we know he didn't really put his foot in his mouth, but it's equal to actually putting your foot in your mouth. Or she set his soup outdoors. Well, you don't set any soup outdoors. But that's a figure of speech that expresses disappointment and anger. Figure of speech, I've told you, literal. L-I-T-E-R-A means word for word, exact, plain truth. Leprosy, infectious skin disease, I've mentioned that. Manifest, to make clear or plain. Obvious, to make obvious. Audible, able to be heard clearly, plain, loud enough. Direct, straight to the point. Straight line method. Ethnic, has to do with racial or cultural distinction. Opposed, when you see in the subject, for example, Miriam and Aaron opposed Moses, it means they argued with Moses, they combated him, they confronted him, and they wanted to deny that what he was doing was right. Sin, to violate, or violation of the rule. I wrote that kind of badly, but it means to violate the rule of God in this context. It means ungodly acts or behavior Kindle means to spark a fire, to induce heat. Intercede, mediate, to step in and bargain with God on behalf of his brother and sister. Heal means to recover, to make new, to plead on behalf of another. Well, that shouldn't be there, but heal means to recover, to make new. So scratch out to plead on behalf of another. That goes with intercede. Dream, to have a view, to conceive, to possess a mental picture of what is to come, or what can be. Vision means a mental image, foresight, outlook of what can and will be, spiritual revelation. Apparent means likely or out in the open. Out in the open. I left out the out in the open. Beseech means to plead on account of, to act in worship, expressing a wish for, or to beg for whatever you're pleading to God for on behalf of somebody else. Meek means peaceful, gentle spirit, have the power to hurt but do not, meaning you have the strength, but you have the humility to not inflict pain needlessly on someone. Tabernacle was a tent for meeting God. The tabernacle is the same as what we call this church building, or the temple, or the synagogue, or the chapel. Disease, a very bad pain from a heartfelt issue or issues. It has to do with health necessarily. It could be emotional, could be intellectual. On page 89, Ferguson, our chief commentator, makes at least 4 points in the introduction section. One of the greatest, I quote directly from Ferguson, one of the greatest enemies facing the local church is jealousy. Jealousy invades families, invades workplaces, classrooms, the schoolhouse, the college campus, the athletic dorms, athletic teams. It invades Congress, local Congress, or state Congress, national Congress, the UN, city hall, city chambers, or city commissioner offices, or anybody, anywhere you have 2 or more people. Jealousy, the idea of the cloud of jealousy lingers or lurks. Number 2, Ferguson brings to mind, whenever God does not give us a position or job in his kingdom's work, it might be because he wants me or you to do better. He has something else different, or he has something better for you. Whenever jealousy arises, it can cause us to speak badly about another. Many times we say things we don't really mean, but in the heat of the battle we say things, we're doing anything to inflict pain or to embarrass or to hurt at that moment. And then you say things and you come to regret it. Number 4, it is especially dangerous when we speak evil or ill of another government leader or of government leaders. There are 10 questions on page 93 of this book that needs answering. Number 1, what reason does the text give initially for Miriam and Aaron's resentfulness of Moses? Well, short answer, it has everything to do with Moses' Ethiopian wife, page 89. Number 2, what was the real reason behind their resentment? Well, although Miriam and Aaron grumbled against Moses' wife, they revealed the jealousy within their own hearts by asking their real question, or the real question. They asked, does God speak only through Moses? You know, many times people like to allow Satan to get in their minds, get in their spirits, and they try to stir the pot, keep stuff going, keep mess going, either on the bus, on the plane, in the break room, on the playground, in the cafeteria, in the restaurant, even at home. Number 3, what did God do immediately in response to Miriam and Aaron's words, harsh words, or bad words against Moses? Short answer, God wasted no time in getting involved in the dispute. See page 91. Number 4, how did the Lord show his presence to Aaron, Miriam, and Moses? Short answer, God descended in a pillar of cloud and stood at the entrance of the tabernacle. Page 91. Number 5, how did God say he typically spoke with prophets? Well, God did not deny that he typically did so by visions and dreams. See page 91. Well, number 6, how did God say he spoke with Moses? God told them. He told Miriam and Aaron how he spoke to God. He said, I speak directly to my servant Moses. Page 92. Number 7, in what way did God punish Miriam? Well, she developed an infectious skin disease. Page 92. Number 8, how did Aaron respond when he saw Miriam with leprosy? Short answer, Aaron immediately turned to Moses and asked him not to punish Miriam and him for their foolishness. You know, they didn't mind talking about Moses and talking bad and mean about him, but when God sent that infectious disease on him, all of a sudden Moses became very important to them. Number 9, how did God answer Moses' prayer on behalf of his sister? Short answer, he said she would be healed and restored, but she would undergo a brief period of punishment. The punishment would last only 7 days. Page 93. 7 days back then was a long time, and 7 days now to be banished from the group is a long time. Number 10, how was God gracious to Miriam even in her judgment? Well, short answer, Miriam's offense called for more shame than that she received. Yet God was willing to treat her graciously. Miriam could have been sentenced to a permanent banishment, but he limited her exile from the camp just 7 days. Page 93. A few notes and quotes we should consider. First, on page 94 of this book, commentator Black suggests 3 major things we ought to do in order to digest this lesson and make it a part of our thinking, of our life, of our personality. 1, he said we are to learn to see God's faithfulness in the face of pettiness and betrayal of even close friend and family. Second, we are to affirm, to testify, to declare the truth that each of our roles in God's plan is determined by God alone. And that's good news. And third, we are to acquire the focus and determination to not be distracted from seeing God's faithfulness by the ungodly acts of those around us. Whatever is going on around us, whatever somebody's doing is not right or not godly, or you feel that's off base, that is upsetting and discouraging, focus on God, and God will wipe that away from you. Now, I haven't always been able to say that easy because it's hard to do it, but you have to grow and mature to that point. Commentator Black also added on page 95, God rebuked, scolded their attitude, and reminded them of Moses' faithfulness and the unique place that Moses had in his divine plan. Commentator Hickman said on page 96, in Christ, we can have intimacy with God and should seek a close relationship with the Father. See verses 6, 7, and 8. On page 97, John Lody, L-O-D-Y, said this: in today's society, we tend to assume that it is our natural right to criticize people in leadership and authority. You see it so often in the political world, in the public sector. People, as soon as a person is elected, everybody who didn't vote for him wants to nitpick and find fault. As soon as he's out of office, they blame him for what is happening to the person that comes in behind him. If they like him, when he gets in office, they blame the person that preceded him. And when he leaves, they still blame the person that preceded him or her. That's just the way it is. That's just natural. It shouldn't happen that way. Here's what Lodi also added. In today's society, we tend to assume that it is our natural right to criticize people in leadership and authority. But this text should counter that blanket assumption, particularly regarding spiritual leadership. We should be wary, very careful, of assuming it is all right for us to criticize openly those who serve God in authority over us we must be careful about this. Let us keep in mind the following. First, God made it very, very clear, according to Spencer on page 101, that Moses was his absolute chosen leader. He informed both Miriam and Aaron that he spoke with Moses face to face. This clearly distinguished Moses from all the other prophets. Commentator Spencer added, when God's voice abruptly ceased, the pillar of cloud departed and Miriam was left with leprosy. This was her punishment for apparently instigating the rebellion against the Lord's anointed leader, Moses. Spencer made a few points in his section under the children's corner. First, Spencer said this. He said that Miriam and Aaron thought they were equal to Moses. Second, children should understand that everyone is not chosen for leadership. Third, Moses never asked God for that leadership role. Fourth, we should never feel more important than we should. Fifth, we must be humble, content, and thankful for who we are and how God has blessed us. Now, basically, in conclusion, this is what stands out in my mind. This is what I see the main message or the whole message. Our focus, my focus, your focus, should be on what God is doing and not so much what others are not doing right. God bless you and thank you. I hope that you join us for worship at 11 a.m.